Okay, we completed the heel in the last video, and now we're ready to start the foot. But there's a little bit of a change from the top, and you already see me doing it. Those pegs that held the heel will also hold the part of the sock that goes beneath the foot, the sole of the foot. So those from henceforth will be simple stockinette knitting. The pattern with the cable crosses is going to continue down the visible part of the foot, the top of the foot. So let's get these first 18 knitted off. Normal stockinette, and every row down the foot will be normal stockinette on these 18 pegs. So that's simple. Then all we need to do is make sure that we remember where we were in the pattern, and it should be very easy to do because we ended with a complete repeat. So we should start with 3 purls, and by now you can look in and clearly see that's what they were. As you look down in, they will look to you like knit stitches. And that's because we're looking at the back or the inside of the knitting, and a knit and a purl are just the exact opposite of one another. So if it's going to look like a purl stitch on the outside of the sock, it will look like a knit stitch on the inside of the sock. As a quick reminder, this is the 4-row sequence, and we are on the first row of it. So we just purl 3 and knit 3 around. I already purled 3. Now I've wrapped these for knitting 3. You do the same. Now when I say all the way around, I now mean only these 18 pegs, because we already worked the ones that will be the sole of the foot. So we'll all go around to here, then we'll all knit these, and we'll do row 2 of the repeat together. Now I'm ready for row 2 of the 4-row repeat. I've already worked the part in stockinette, running along here. So we begin with purl 3. This is just a quick review. We've covered the pattern very thoroughly in the first video. This is just a reminder. Purl 3. Now 2 LC on the first 2 pegs of the group of 3 knit stitches. So we knit the second one, skipping the first, lift the second one, move 1 to 2, 2 to 1. The new stitch on peg 2 has yet to be knitted off, so we do it, and knit 1. And then repeat the sequence that we just performed on these 3 2 more times, and then around with knit stitches, and we'll be ready for row 3. Row 3 coming up. I did plain knitting here, did the row 2 part of the pattern here. I'm back around, so we begin purl 3, knit 3, and we repeat that 3 times to cover the 18 stitches that will be the top of the foot. Just like this. There's the purl 3, knit the next 3 stitches. Alright, I knitted the row 3 part of the cable pattern along here, plain knit stitches around here, and we're ready for row 4 of the cable pattern. As always, these stitches are purled. And this is very similar to row 2, with one small change. We knit 1 stitch before doing the 2 LC. On row 2, we knit the 2 LC first, and then knit 1. So knit one, skip one, knit the following peg, lift the stitch off, replace it with stitch 1 of the 2, swap their positions, now knit off the second peg. And what we just did here repeats here and here, and then we'll do plain knitting around the sole of the foot again. Let's do some quick figuring to understand how to change Tom's original pattern to work with our new gauge. Here are the sizes, 1, 2, and 3 year. Down the foot, Tom originally called for 5 repeats, 6 repeats, or 7 repeats of the cable pattern. We know that to be times 4 rows. So that tells us how many rows each size had down the foot, excluding the heel and toe. The heel and toe add a total of 24 rows to the total length of the foot, and I will explain that in a moment. So that makes the total foot rows originally these numbers. At 10 rows per inch, this tells us how long the socks are intended to be. We still want to achieve that length. But since we are going to only get 8 rows per inch, not 10, the row count will not be identical. When I multiply 4.4, 4.8, and 5.2 times 8, these come out the ideal row counts, comparing them to these. So we don't need as many rows to get the same size as one would need if knitting at 10 rows per inch. Here's another way to picture what's going on. Our sock top rows end here. Then we begin knitting our heel rows. So that adds distance here and distance here. Because we worked with these 18 pegs, but we short rowed in until only 6 were working, it took 12 rows to short row in. It will take another 12 to short row out. So the first 12 went here. The second 12 will go here. Now we need to knit the foot length rows. And then we will short row in the toe again, adding 12 rows this direction, and short row out, which adds 12 rows of length going this way. So we'll have our total length. I'm going to call that X. All of these rows contribute to the total length of the foot on the sock. So in order to discover X, we need to take the total length required and subtract these 12 and these 12, because they're already accounting for their share of length, and we only want to know about this piece. When I did that, here is what I came up with. For the 3 sizes, we need 11 foot rows, 14 foot rows, and 18 foot rows. And I'm going to suggest that you alter this to either 13 or 15, and this to either 17 or 19. It will only change the foot length by 1/8 of an inch, and the reason for it is that the row after a cross, with the cross still remaining on the pegs, is harder to make a neat Kitchener stitch than a plain row is. Since row 1 is plain and row 3 is plain, we would rather do our Kitchenering after rows 1 or 3, meaning that we need to knit an odd number of rows. That's my thinking there. You don't have to do it, but it will make life a little bit easier. And the reason for going into how we achieve these numbers is so that you can figure out how to achieve any number you want. Let's do that real quick. Suppose you are knitting for a child who the circumference will fit, but his feet are just a little bit longer. We'll say they're 5 5.5 inches long. We would multiply 5.5 times 8. I just did that, and that comes up with 44 rows needed. We still need to subtract this 12 and this 12, a total of 24. So that leaves us, for this little bit longer foot, 20 rows that should be knitted. And again, my suggestion would be to knit either 19 or 21, so as to allow us to do our Kitchenering on a plain row. I have now finished all of my foot length rows and started short rowing the toe. Short row a toe exactly as you short rowed the heel and use the same pegs. It's very easy to tell which they are because they're the ones with the plain knitting on them. We've gone down the sole of the foot, so we'll be working on these pegs. Finish the toe by following all of the heel instructions with one exception. There is no picking up of a stitch and hanging it here the way I did to make sure that there would be no hole at the corner of the heel. With the toe, we'll be Kitchenering, and we can close that, any tendency using our Kitchener. No need to complicate matters by having multiple stitches on a peg. Now, if you feel super comfortable with the Kitchenering according to the pattern, you can go ahead and finish your sock. But I will be making one more video about a method of getting the sock off of the loom and the toe Kitchener closed that I think is a little bit easier to deal with on this loom than the one Tom gives in the pattern.